the bassist for the group, John Paul Jones, turns out to be one of the best interviewers. I mean, a lot of respect for John Bonham's right foot. I follow that right foot. I revere that right foot. I give that right foot space. And he talked about hello, welcome to number 8. Oh, you're a little close. You're kind of doing this thing. Yeah. Anyway, I had a lunch in Whole Foods, kind of their buffet style thing, and there was a guy. He set up like a whole. Actually, he was probably not podcasting. He was probably recording a TikTok, but he had a special contraption on his phone. It's a ring light. The phone, it holds the phone in the center, has the light all around the ring. And he set it up, and it had a little tripod, and it balanced. And then I think he had a little handheld lav mic or something. I've been seeing a lot. It's kind of a little rectangular thing that a lot of people are using now. And he could kind of record this video. And I'm like, well, I hope he's using a mic, because the ambient sound in Whole Foods is this echoey nightmare. But I thought, this is very Austin-y to see a guy there doing his thing, making some comment about things. He was talking about media and hits and stuff, and I don't know. He's clearly in this business. I don't know. The Gene Hackman death was weird.
Carbon monoxide, I bet.
I heard he died. I'm like, well, 95, nice, healthy, long life. I'm like, no, mysterious circumstances. Wife and dog died too. That's not cool. That's unfortunate. And I was thinking about, I was just trying to appreciate him as an actor. And and I realized, like, a lot of the things, because he was this huge chunk of concrete and a lot of power. And if he really, I'm trying to imagine being another actor, like standing 2 feet in front of him, and he just like lets go all his power at you and cannons you in the face. That must be you're not really acting at that point. You're like, oh my god, I'm terrified of this man. So he could really be, his dramatic roles could be very intense, but he also had this really light, deft comic touch. When he did comedy, he was terrific at comedy. I remember, like, starting with Young Frankenstein. So Mel Brooks is the first one to say, given that he'd just been playing Popeye Doyle, it's like, who should be the old blind guy? Gene Hackman. But he's terrific, and he's so gentle in it. And all the way up through the Birdcage, the Superman movies, that was a comic performance. Royal Tenenbaums, he was really, really good at being funny in just the right way, but he could do all these other things. And then I last thought of
you're right. He wasn't remembered for that. He was remembered for things like The Conversation or
Crimson Tide,
Popeye Doyle, or
And but yeah, he had, and I thought, and he's in The Firm, and he's the only one of the bad guys you feel sympathy for. He manages to make this guy who's actually kind of cruel and a crumb and seducing Tom Cruise's wife. You kind of feel for the guy by the end. I'm like, I don't know quite how he managed to get that in there. So he had a lot of things. I bet you
because at a base he's like nice guy, and that nice guy thing comes through even when he's playing a crumb.
No, something like that.
Something like that.
I don't know. As an actor yourself, do you have any particular take on Gene Hackman?
Oh, I'm a big fan. I liked him a lot. Whenever I knew he was in a film, I was more interested to see it.
Mm-hmm.
He was good, and he was particularly good in The Conversation. I really love his performance in that.
Yeah, it's getting a lot more attention just right now because of this. Like, that's the one people wanted to look up again immediately. Yeah. Anyway, I don't have much more to say than that, but it was like, it was on my mind over the weekend.
Did he actually win an Oscar? I know he was nominated.
I believe he won for The French Connection, and he won for Unforgiven, playing Little Bill, the sheriff.
Oh, you're right. And
this isn't really fair. Good. I just built a house. Like, life isn't fair, Little Bill. And that was one where he had all sorts of different colors going on in that movie, because there was a cruel streak, but also just an everyday guy kind of thing. And yeah, and then just like crying like I'm not the bad guy out here. I'm the law and order. Why are you killing me? Well, you killed my friend and let him be strung up there, so I guess you gotta go. I'm sorry. Yeah, that was 92. Oh, that reminds me, the Oscars were last night, and halfway through I'm like, oh, Anora's gonna win everything. I don't know why it will. It's a nice movie. I saw it, when it came out. It won the Palme d'Or, but it's a nice little movie. It's a little indie movie. And I guess maybe just the voters, they're looking at the screeners and everyone said, yeah, I was entertained by that. So maybe, yeah, I'll vote for that or something. The real surprise was because for a long time I thought Demi Moore would win the actress Oscar. And then I thought, no, it's going to be that lady in the Brazilian movie. I think a lot of people were
saying that.
I was thinking the rest of the night, like, no, yeah, that Brazilian movie is so powerful, that actress has probably got it locked up. And then Mikey Madison wins for Honor, and I was like, oh, that was a surprise. That was a genuine surprise.
Well, I looked at one of those sites that kind of tries to predict, and they had the arrows going up and down. It's sort of like bracketology for the NCAAs.
Right.
This team's going up. This team's going down. And they do the same thing for Oscars, and they had Mikey Madison going down just 3-4 days ago. And Demi Moore going up. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, oh, well, maybe they know something. I don't know, but they don't know.
They didn't know nothing. So. The only other surprise, because I was sort of calling, I was like, I should have filled out one of those cards where you can win if you call it, because I was calling them all night long. The Brutalist winning for score was interesting. I'm like, it did have an interesting score. I remember thinking that at the time. You're looking at the image, because it also won cinematography, for its Vista Vision. I guess the cinematographers all said, yeah, okay. You win.
You dug up a Vista Vision
camera. But the winning score was a genuine surprise also. I'm like, oh, I thought it was going to be Wicked or Emilia Perez or something like that. You never know.
I'm kind of surprised at Emilia Perez because... That was really interestingly constructed.
It was a unique idea. And I was listening to it was like the Real Band podcast, actually, which no longer exists. They were like, "This is our last episode, bye." And I just started listening to it. Said that Conclave is exactly the sort of movie that would have won all the Oscars in the early '90s. I'm like, oh yeah, I see what you're saying. It kind of had that classical old Hollywood kind of classy production kind of thing to it. I saw a nice YouTube about how it's actually a very visual effects heavy movie because they weren't actually in the Sistine Chapel.
Right.
It's a digital thing. It's so well done you don't even think about it. You just think they're filming in the Sistine Chapel somehow. But no, the green screens out the wazoo and all sorts of things, rebuilding it.
Didn't they just build a big narrow thing for them to be in and filled it all in digitally afterwards?
They said they had a huge, Cinecita or Cinecita, how do you pronounce it? Huge, because they have big rooms and they filled it up with all sorts of different size things, the corridors and the things and the actual chapel and this and that and the other. All you walk out one door of one thing and suddenly you're in a crazy other place that just fits in that little thing. Sounded very efficient, but yeah. And other than that, yeah, it was like and I'm not going to get into it, but I don't like the particular host they chose. I kind of have a thing about Conan O'Brien, and I was bracing for it. I was like, yeah, and I didn't like watching him at all. It's just he has this weird way of everything's about him. Even if the jokes are self-deprecatory, it's like all the jokes are about him. He brought on LA firefighters to thank them for putting out the fires. And he said thank you. And then he took several moments from them to say, why am I saying thanks? I didn't put out the fires. You guys did. Ha 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 ha. And I'm like, stop making it about you. And then he had them tell jokes. One of which was like, hey, Conan, remember that time you were caught up in a tree and I had to get you down? I was like, it's a joke about him. Why? He changed clothes in the middle and like, hey, what do you think of my new suit? How do I look? And I'm like, will you stop?
It's blue.
It's blue. You're not a movie anything. Why are you the Oscar? And he had did it. I said I wasn't going to get into this. I'm not going to waste time by doing a musical number. Hit it! Da-da-da-da-da-da. And he starts dancing, and I realized they're dancing with like little golden hair pieces that look like his hair. And I'm like, oh, the original idea was he thinks he looks like the Oscar statuette because it's tall and thin. And I'm like, it probably he originally wanted it to be naked like the Oscar is. They talked him into putting suits on it. But like he's making like all these gold statuettes are supposed to look like Conan O'Brien, like he's the Oscar. I thought it's weird. Also, it all goes back to I can't remember where I heard it, and I should find the evidence of this. But Stephen Colbert was on somebody's podcast and told a story about Conan O'Brien that made me really not like the guy ever again.
Oh, really?
And he thought it was a funny, fun story. But I'm just like, that is so creepy. The youngsters say cringe. I still like to say cringe-inducing or cringe-worthy. But yeah, I find Conan to be in that category. So that was kind of unpleasant for me because I just thought, I don't know why everyone else doesn't think the same thing about it. Like, doesn't he skis you out too? I guess not. And he's everywhere. My podcast app keeps suggesting shows you might like, and there's Conan in his face because they keep thinking he's the next one I want to listen to. I'm like, I do not want to listen to this. How do I tell you not to show this? He's on my YouTube constantly with clips because I like comedians, and he interviewed a lot of comedians. I'm like, no. I'm not clicking on it because it's him.
He was a comedian, though.
He was a comedian. I mean, I sort of get the career path. Harvard Lampoon, Late Night Writer, Simpsons, Saturday Night Live, and then gets his own show and stuff. But there's just like, I don't know. I was okay with him for a while, but over the past 35 years, I'm getting tired.
I like Jimmy Kimmel, actually.
I wasn't into him for a while, then I finally realized that actually he's okay. And I'm okay with Jimmy Kimmel. He's actually not so bad. And he's actually kind of a nice guy, I think. I had the impression he wasn't that nice of a guy for a long time, but I think I had that wrong. I was just...
I've not heard any scuttlebutt. But, the thing about comedians is they tend to be... Most of them are funny because they had a bad childhood.
They're slightly damaged in some way.
They are slightly damaged, and sometimes they're really insecure. And I think O'Brien might be on that insecure side.
Yeah.
Insecure side, which is why he's making everything about him.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just pop psychology on my part. I don't know.
Pivoting to current politics and stuff, I was really it's been almost a while since this happened now. But Jeff Bezos writing a letter to his editorial board at the Washington Post, I was so mad when I read that. Especially his little fatuous reasoning. Like, well, there was a time when a new editorial page might have a balanced bunch of opinions to give you, but you can look on the internet is for that now. And I'm like, are you kidding? Are you kidding? Because everything exists on the internet, you will go out and find a balanced diet. When every algorithm narrowcasts one thing to every person, it is the most, like Colonel Potter used to say, horse hockey.
Horse hockey.
Buffalo bagels.
And the fact that he's supposedly in that, he's supposed to be a tech entrepreneur, and he really believes that? He clearly doesn't believe that.
No, I mean, it's so disingenuous.
That's the best argument he can make?
I know, and he also said, so because everything exists out there, this thing that I promised I would not interfere with is just going to print my opinions from now on. If it has to do with super deregulation and personal liberty, but I'm like, there's a point where deregulation to an extreme will infringe on personal liberty, and or if you want to protect personal liberty, you have to regulate these corporations a little bit. So they're not compatible ideas that he's saying are the one thing that he wants to protect. But it's really weird, and he swore like, yeah, I'm buying the Washington Post, but no, I won't tell them what to print. I just want to own it, and here we are. Nope.
Well, He's a megalomaniac, so that's what happens.
He is a little
You
bit,
know,
and
eventually,
he has a little bit of a
the
crazy
megalomania
thing
comes out.
where there's a thing like if you see too much white around someone's eyes all the time,
Yeah.
they got a little weird thing going on. Jeff Bezos has too much white around his eyes when he's staring.
Oh, wow, I've never heard that. I'll have to watch for that.
Yeah, you have to watch for that. And I had this other idea, like, you know, because Elon is like trying to line up Starlink to be the replacement for, I don't know, the FAA or something.
Yeah, he seems to think.
I'm remembering, you know, reading a news story within the last year of like how fast they were sending Starlink satellites into space. It's this incredible schedule. Just
wow. It was super fast.
And I'm thinking, okay, now that I've seen another demonstration of Elon's like faster, faster, do it mentality, I'm like, they've got to be cutting some kind of corner. How long is it going to be until those things start falling out of the sky? Or just breaking down, not enough radiation shielding in slightly the wrong orbital path.
It's okay. I put up extras.
Yeah, like he's putting up extras because he knows they're going to start degrading and falling out of the sky and landing on people and stuff. It's the same philosophy. He's done it too fast, too much, and he's cut corners because he's cheap.
And he hasn't thought it all the way through.
Oh my God! Here we are. I don't know, but yeah, I'm expecting something to happen with Starlink. Like it's not as good as you think, and we should not commit everything to being on Starlink. Oh,
yeah. Well, you know what? That makes a lot of sense, actually, to me.
Yeah, I thought I was like, oh no, you can see it. You can just see it.
Have you seen all the stories of the body parts falling off of the Cybertruck?
Body parts? Like side paneling, just like
not human beings. But
sorry, I went there first.
Parts of the body of the truck. So
severed limbs falling off of Cybertrucks here and there. That's a factory worker that was told to rush faster.
He's inside. But these parts are coming off, and so people were picking them up, and they were putting them back in their truck to take them to Tesla to have them reattached. And they looked at it really closely, and they went, "These are just hot glued on."
Hot glue. Oh my! You know these things have to sit outside in the weather.
Maybe it wasn't exactly the same kind of hot glue that you find at Michael's or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But they were looking. You know, the owners were looking. There's no screws. There's no
rivets. There's no
welds. It's glue.
It's glue. It's not permanent at all. I mean, all just getting hotter and then cooling down and getting hotter and cooling down will crack glue off like that. We all know that. That's how glue works. It's that's how cheap they are.
That's how.
And how much does one of those trucks cost?
And he charges $90,000 for these things.
Mm-hmm. They're spit and baling wire together because you know he did feel that he had like, oh, we've pre-sold a lot of these and they're not coming out fast enough, so then he orders faster, cheaper.
Yeah.
And he
does that all the time.
He's still going after the government, but
I put down $100 on one back in 2019 or 2018, right after we bought the 3, and they said, "Oh, it'll be out December 2020." And December 20 rolls around. We're 2 years away. And 2022 rolls around. And finally I got an email, like I think it was last year. "Oh, we're ready for you to pick all the features on your truck." And I went, "No, just give me my money back. Just send me the 100. Well, why are you bailing on the truck?" And I went, "You overpromised, you underdelivered. It's way more expensive than you said it was going to be." Because they told me the one that I was looking at was about $42,000 to $48,000.
Oh,
it was almost twice that.
yeah.
And so I said, you know, it's not worth it. And besides, you don't have a reasonable board, very clearly, or you would have fired the jackass running your company a long time ago. when he clearly went nuts.
Yeah.
And you're not,
and he's
like,
sort of AWOL now. He spends all his time in Washington. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, how could he be running a company?
Yeah, I don't know. He can't be. But they must feel too intimidated to fire him. Like, be a board and say you are not living up to our expectations of a CEO. And
if they were a real board, if they were a real board, it's saying, look, pick one. You can be Tesla CEO, you can be SpaceX CEO, you can be Boring Company CEO, you can be Boring Person CEO, but you can't be them all because you're split and you're not giving any of them enough attention.
Yeah.
But they don't do that.
No. Somehow, we're watching them every day not do that. I mean, people are the stock price is going down. People are buying fewer Teslas, especially in Europe. There are protests at some Tesla showrooms and China.
Nobody's buying them in China anymore.
I mean, this one guy, Chris Norland, that I listened to, he's actually based, I think, in South Korea. But he's the guy that started out just being financial, and now he's covering politics because Elon is so much more politics. But he's like, I'm much more aware of the local Asian competition, and there's a Chinese company they're selling like hotcakes. There's Korean companies coming up with it. Tesla is now 10 years behind instead of 10 years ahead of everyone else, and they have no new models coming out. They have nothing else coming out that will recompete in this increasingly hot market. So he sees the writing way on the wall. Like, this is
well, and he laughed when they said, I forget the name of the Chinese company, BMD or something like that.
I cannot remember it precise.
I can't remember the actual name, but they said, well, they're making a car. They're selling their cars for like $24,000.
Yeah, they actually are selling it for that. Yeah.
And he goes, and he laughed. He went, oh, have you seen the features? I'm sorry, it sounds like Arnold.
The features, you can get in it and drive it and go where you need to go, and not pay $100,000. There's the feature right there. There's no features. Where's their touch screen?
That is the same CEO in the early car business who laughed at Henry Ford. Okay, laugh all the way.
Laugh at Tins Lizzie all the way to. Yeah, I mean, because there were in the first 15 years of cars, there were lots of companies, lots of people, because you could tinker one together yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all like, my car looks so much better, and it performs better than that stupid black Model T, Model A, Model T. And Ford's like, okay, but everyone's gonna afford one. And bye. And he left them in the dust.
Well, he was selling his mass assembled cars in see if I get the year right, 23 for $300. Now that's not cheap, considering $300 was a lot of money.
You'd have to imagine it was a lot of money.
1923. But everybody else was selling their cars for over $1,000.
Right, in 1923 money. Yikes!
Only rich people could own a car.
It's the idea, like, hey, maybe the middle class can afford one of these things too. This is interesting. It's reminding me of there was a New Yorker piece on this incredible drive for efficiency and productivity and measuring white collar productivity that's driving Musk in his cuts and the way he runs his companies has been an idea that's been passed down. A guy taught it to Sergey Brin and Larry, what's his name, when Google started, and it became this thing they couldn't get out of their heads. And it goes back to every PBS documentary that says the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation. I think Alfred P. Sloan was an efficiency expert who worked at Ford, I didn't know that. And came up with a classification of how they could, and it does go back to Henry Ford himself, the idea of, okay, if they're actually mechanically doing something together, you can measure that productivity by how many cars come out the other end with all the parts in the right place. But when it's an information technology thing, you can't quite quantify it, because some of it you got to spend thinking through a problem and not actually typing anything or something. Yeah, but they're still obsessed with the idea that, no, it can be quantified. We can measure it. We can insist on it. Like, this is the whole
Name
5 bullet
things
points.
you did last week.
Name your 5 things. It's funny how many parodies of, like, the 5 things Musk did last week. You know, another baby, destroyed this and that. And he did. He's had a 14th baby appeared on the scene.
14th.
I thought it was like, because he's absolutely serious when he says he wants to, like, impregnate as many people as possible and do it personally.
Oh, clearly.
And I think, you know what he's heard? He's heard like a quarter of the world's population now has, like, Genghis Khan's genetics in them or something like that. And he's like, I want, in 100 years, everyone to be my gene pool. Everyone on Mars will have my... It's some monstrous ego thing like that. If I can seed enough people in the world, my genetics will live forever.
He needs to die of a rare disease and tomorrow.
I mean,
I'm not advocating violence against the man. It would be best for humanity if he does not exist anymore. So,
there's also something very
exotic disease. Please go get that guy.
I mean, his early nerdhood, a lot of his ideas seem like they just come from comic books he read a long time ago. That we will travel by suction tubes and we will live on Mars. And there's something deeply childish about his thought processes.
He's a man baby just like Trump. They're both man babies.
Both man babies. And I'm not quite sure what J.D. Vance is, but it's all some kind of performative, I want to fit in thing. Or, you know, when you have the class bully, there's always, like, the slightly tweedier guy behind him going, yeah, you heard what he said. You heard him.
The Toady.
The Toady.
Remember Scut Farkus from Christmas Story? And he had that little guy, who ran around with him and, yeah! What Scut said! And you know, Trump is Scut Farkus, and Vance is the little Toady.
I mean, that dangerous scene in the White House with them all.
That was a.
I had to brace myself before I watched it, but
we're tough guys, and we're going to beat up on this guy.
Yeah, I mean, someone made the comment like JD's stuff sounded rehearsed, like he was just waiting for a moment where he'd be able to, and it's like, yeah, it kind of has that about it. You've never once said thank you. It's such a weird little, like he's scolding a child thing to say. Trying to
exactly
like, I'm going to wear Big Daddy pants and scold you. Meanwhile, this guy has been the leader of a war that was he was not expected to last this long with, and he's acting like an adult. Right. Although he's probably I'm trying to think, wow, you know, if I were in that seat, my face would flush and I would feel all these crazy emotions because they're just inches from me, blasting me. And there's cameras everywhere.
I'm putting up with a lot of crap, and they're not. And they're criticizing me for it.
Yeah, in weird ways. And, of course, the spin is already out that, like, they're trying to reverse it and say Zelensky, it was like a trap where he lured them into his trap to confront them. Or better yet, Obama colluded with Zelensky to lay this trap for Obama, who's been out of power for 12 years. He's still pulling the strings. It's Obama. He's got them all where he wants them. It's clearly madness, but
he will never let go of that. That is, he's a dog with a bone on that one.
And the whole
we'll never let go because Obama made fun of him at the correspondence dinner.
May 2011. That really caused a great deal of trouble in human history. Those jokes at his expense.
All kidding aside, obviously we all know about your credentials and breadth of experience. For example, no, seriously, just recently in an episode of Celebrity Apprentice, you fired Gary Busey. And these are the kind of decisions that would keep me up at night.
And weirdly, it's really hard to remember this, but secretly, Obama was ordering the strike that killed Osama bin Laden
That same night,
that
right?
same night. That was a crazy day in American history. But you can see there Trump just burning with fury and shame, and
you could see how mad he was.
And he's like, "Oh yeah, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be president next, and I'm going to ruin everything you've done." And he's sort of gotten to do that, which is horrible. But yeah, you could. It's an ill wind blew out of the White House Correspondents' Dinner that night.
Well, I mean, honestly, we have become a very sick country, a very twisted, sick country, because a guy like that, an obvious charlatan, an obvious con man, an obvious fraud, would have been laughed out of party politics, even before the first primary. But
should have been.
Things are so screwed up. I mean, after 2010, the Republicans had a chance at 2010 to shut down that god-awful, ignorant Tea Party, and they didn't do it.
Nope.
Instead, they kowtowed to it. And that just metastasized into this.
Mm-hmm. Clearly,
that was Trumpism without Tea Party.
Nope. Yeah, it's it's not even like, can we find the threads that connect? It's like, no, it's a straight line that goes like this from one thing to the next.
Well,
and the madness still hasn't broken at the top. I mean, the down below, people are like waking up and yelling at town halls and stuff. But like, my brother lives in Virginia, and he's like, he heard the governor, 100,000 people at least in Virginia fired indiscriminately, and he's on Trump's side saying this is a good thing that he's doing. The Doge thing is great. It's working. It's like, these are your Virginian voters, citizens, and you don't care about them.
Well, he can't get reelected, so what does he care?
Is that what it is? Is he already served out his terms?
They can only serve one term. They cannot serve consecutive terms. Mm. They can't come back. That's why McAuliffe ran the second time.
Oh, right. Okay.
But they can't serve consecutive terms, and most of them just do one, and then they're gone. Mm. They run for president or whatever.
I'm switching topics again because I don't know why. I wanted to put a little clip of Casablanca into our last episode. And I thought, well, I own a DVD of Casablanca. Great. I'll hook it up, put it in there, try and do a screen capture, and Apple's own internal DVD player app blanks the screen out, just gray. No audio, no picture. I'm like, but all right, I guess that's not how... I'm still wondering how all these other people that have clips of everything get their clips. But... So I looked on YouTube for clips of Casablanca, and the only one they really have is the Marseillaise scene, which is why I used that. But because I really wanted something, I wanted the part where they were in Paris. But it's just frustrating to me that I can't actually, this is media I bought, and I think I'm making.
But they have anti-piracy stuff on it.
Yeah, they have anti-piracy just built into their own software. I mean, maybe I could use some software to get around it, but I don't know. I think I have another way of doing it.
They used to have ripping software.
Yeah, there used to be a lot of ripping software.
CDs or DVDs.
But they don't have that as much.
Stuff works.
Yeah, I don't think everything has kind of moved on from that era of video stuff. So I keep finding I'm finding more and more evidence that I'm from some earlier era and I don't fit in today's world. And at this point I'm hearing like 35-year-olds complain about how old they are because 20-year-olds know more than they do about because everything's changing faster and faster. So younger and younger, you're feeling out of step by a generation. However, if I see one more, I'm listening to the Beatles for the first time, I'm going to go crazy. Hey, I'm a sound engineer and I've produced records, and I'm listening to the Beatles for the first time. I'm like, how are you listening? You didn't do that on the way to becoming an audio engineer or a record producer? I don't want to... all these twerpy little kids. You ought to have listened. You shouldn't be proud of the fact that you haven't listened to it yet. you might have learned a few things. I don't know. I guess I'm glad you're doing it now, but it's weird. Yeah, I mean, that's where I started, was trying to listen to the Beatles and learn what they were doing in the studio. Very informative. I had a class from a really cool guy. He's still out and around, and there was a nice episode of Neil deGrasse Tyson's podcast with him as a guest. His name is Daniel Levitin. And he studies musicology as, what it's really doing to our brains, how our brains process it, how it makes our emotions and memories work and all that stuff. So he's a very smart guy, very fun guy. And he had this class where he's just like, I want to teach you all what they do in a music studio, what music production is. So he played the Beatles, and he played Led Zeppelin, and he played the whole Dark Side of the Moon album on these really nice speakers that he had tweaked himself to sound terrific with this huge wide stereo separation, so you could really hear things going back and forth, so especially in the early days of stereo when they did that a lot. And,
and the Led Zeppelin albums, man, if you have the headphones on, it goes
that whole lot. That's one of the movies there's a Led Zeppelin documentary in theaters right now, and I was like, I'm not the biggest Zeppelin fan. I have some appreciation for him, but I'm like, but you get the chance to hear the music in the movie theater speakers. That would be worth it, buying a ticket. And so I did, and it was an interesting mix of people, some kind of my age, some kind of younger. Really fun documentary, and they let some songs play in their full length, which most documentaries don't do. Including, like, they kind of save a whole lot of love till, like, near the end, and then just, they talk about it and bits and pieces, and then
that's one that in that break where you just hear Bonham hitting the cymbals.
Yeah.
That's where he starts going, and it goes.
Yeah, I mean, and so, and especially because there was one point when I had a drum kit, and then I got really into like what John Bonham was doing. Though I tried to play along with that song, and I wasn't doing it right. Because some of what I was trying to do was with my hands, but no, it's his right foot on that bass drum. And then they have the bassist for the group, John Paul Jones. Turns out to be one of the best interviewers. I mean, the other three guys, Bonham died young, but the other three guys, newly interviewed.
And an American war hero, too.
Looked pretty good. But he was saying, like, I have a lot of respect for John Bonham's right foot. I follow that right foot. I revere that right foot. I give that right foot space. And he talked about sometimes, if I can hear him do something, I will not play a few notes so that he punches out more in the mix. And then when I come back in, it like really does something really cool. And he was talking, this was funny, he was talking about meeting Robert Plant for the first time and hearing him sing. And he's like, and his range. And he like looked up at the ceiling and was like, what are you doing up there? You'll hurt yourself. And the guy, I chuckled, and the guy next to me chuckled too. It's like, well, yeah, we all know now what Robert Plant sounds like, but back then, and it's one of these things where like they got together for one rehearsal, and just everything like boom, and they clicked, and they knew they had something immediately. Like, oh, I think, hey lads, this is gonna work. But here's something I should have known. It's like I feel like this should have been trivia known before. That John Paul Jones and Jimmy Page, they were both session musicians, and they both played on the Goldfinger theme song. Goldfinger. They're both on that track. One playing bass and one playing guitar. Yeah, it's like, it feels like that should have been trivia that was sort of known in rock and roll circles for years. I mean, you have half of Led Zeppelin playing on this famous James Bond tune. No. Everyone in the screening went, really? Why are you just telling this now? Very interesting.
Yeah.
And that was in the heady days where, like, Jimmy Page was
Did they go into the whole, how they basically came out of the Yardbirds and the New Yardbirds and then became Led Zeppelin? And, they do talk about that.
And Jimmy Page, Jimmy Page had been in the Yardbirds, and when he knew it was breaking up, he's like, okay, I know exactly what I want to do next. I know the kinds of sounds I want to do. I know the kind of playing I want to do. I don't want to break up a set of songs by having one of them be the single and being pulled out. I want people to listen to one album half and flip it over and listen to the whole other half. And I need leverage to do this because record companies are not going to want to agree to this. But he got everything he wanted. He's like, okay, now I need a singer and a drummer. And maybe that guy I used to know, the bass player, maybe I'll call him. That's what I mean. Like, so they all four got together just like as haphazardly almost as that. With Jimmy Page saying, I kind of want to do blues and but in kind of a new way. And everyone's like, okay. Count it off. Thump, 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 and then they're off and running.
And Bonham had a lot of jazz drumming in his background, so he had no problem drumming in weird signatures like 4/7 and stuff like that. And so because you listen to it and it's wait, did he just skip it? It sounded like he just skipped a beat. Well, you have to if you're doing that time signature.
I mean, he just
so
had kind of
he was just brilliant at it.
I mean, he definitely. I mean, he had
and they would change time signatures in the middle of songs too.
Rhythm,
which is really weird.
A melodic sense of because the drums are tuned, so they actually hit notes that can be in tune with the other instruments. And then just sort of his muscular power, he just sounds brawny, but he can be fast too. So he's fast enough. So anyway, yeah.
Not only that, he was metronomic. You know, all the really good drummers, they are just right. They're solid. They're right on top of it.
And these days, you've got a whole genre of YouTubes that somehow have access to the original. They call it isolated stems. Like if you have an 8-track, they have all 8 tracks. So one instrument per track with a stereo on it. You can just listen to him on the drums pulled out from everything else. And it's like, oh, there he is. Yeah. You can almost imagine you're sitting there with it. And I'm like, I wish I had that back when I was more serious about this, because I would have listened to it over and over again and really gotten somewhere good. But yeah, that's a whole thing now. People pulling apart the tracks, and you get to listen to them one track at a time. It's really fun. That didn't exist before.
Do they do that with software? How do they?
I'm not sure. Some of them have
without having the original tapes. How do they do that?
Yeah, I mean, and AI can sort of pull them out now. So some of it might be that, but there's also been an underground some studio engineer kind of every time an artist came in to record something, copied it to a secret hard drive and then trains it around to other people he knows, and so they've gotten around a little bit. Not supposed to. It's actually piracy.
Copyright.
Yeah, they can, and they would be fired if they knew they were doing this. But of course, we all know they're doing this, and yes. I mean, sometimes things get preserved that otherwise, oops, we lost the master in a fire, and that guy goes, actually, I have a really good first-gen copy of it, if you really want to know. So,
yeah, it's like, how do I get that back in there without them knowing that I stole a copy?
Stole a copy. This has been going on for quite some time, I think.
Look what I found over here.
Oh, guy, hey, boss. Weird. Oh, look. Yeah. What else?
That's why I love, some of the old films that have been reconstructed. They say, unfortunately, this whole section of the film, this whole part of the film has been lost to history.
Right.
And then a year later, someone says, hey, I found this reel in Rio de Janeiro. And it has Spanish subtitles burnt into it, but it's the scene. And then, so they put it back in the movie. And I saw one, I forget what it was, but I saw one movie like that. They didn't even bother to, do the digital restoration to take the subtitles. You're watching along, and all of a sudden,
now. Spanish. That's funny. I mean, where did
I guess the Criterion Collection will clean that up. So.
It's something I didn't even realize. Now, who was talking about this? But especially coming off the silent days, like someone like Chaplin, they would almost make several different versions of the movie because they had a lot of takes of each scene, and there was some esoteric reason why, like, okay, the western half of the U.S. will get the prints cut from the best takes of the A set of takes, and then I'll make the one that's the best ones of the B quality takes, and that'll be the eastern half of the U.S. and part of South America. And so he could make more negatives because he was, without going down so much in quality. There was some reason for it. Like somehow this was actually easier than making more and more prints and wearing out a negative faster because he was. But that means
So
like
if you
the
had more
version of the
negatives,
Gold
then
Rush
you could
we've been
make more
watching for
prints.
years is actually the C and D prints kind of mixed together and not the A one that he wanted people to see. And they're trying to find all those elements now. Like, oh, they've now learned that he was doing this, and like, oh yeah, and you can compare different, because he would, in the 40s, he was starting to re-release his movies with new soundtracks that he composed just for the re-release. And yeah, and sometimes those are different from the much older. But of course, some of those old nitrate negatives are kind of not in good shape. So,
Falling apart.
So the 40s versions made from some inner positive dupe from some negative that were you know how this works. It's a whole thing.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and
Well, that's why I was saying about them finding a reel of of clearly a positive. It was screened in some theater and somehow got stuck off into an attic or something. And then somebody dug through. Oh, that's interesting. What's this film? And then they went, hey, it's reel 3 of blankety blank. And everybody, what? That doesn't exist.
Or sometimes it's a
right
mislabeled or unlabeled box or something.
Yeah. Or it had the label fall off of it and they didn't know what was in there. And yeah, that shit happens all the time. It's still happening in in Eastern Europe and Budapest and Prague. They're finding old caches of films, and once they find them, all these film. I don't know, what do you call a film historian? They all run in there and they go, what is it? What is it? And they're trying to find out because Lon Chaney Sr. I think they have maybe 3 of the many films he did.
Like over 100 films, and they have 3. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he did over 100 films, and we have 3 of them.
Right.
In Toto.
Yeah, probably fractions of all of them. Yeah.
They would show the film, make as much money from it as possible, and reuse it.
Yeah. Oh.
Take all the emulsion off it, re-emulse it, and do it again. So they were truly lost. I mean,
truly lost.
Once you do that to a negative, too bad. And that's why
there's been
a
long
lot of the
history
Lon Chaney movies we only know from people's descriptions of them.
Yeah.
Plenty of Lon Chaney Jr., but
yeah, we got a lot of Lon Chaney Jr. Yeah, we do. I mean, there was a lot of this in the television industry where, because they started out with like 2-inch tape or even 4-inch tapes. So they took up a lot of space. So they're like, well, let's just erase those. And, or now we're using 1-inch tapes, so throw all those out. And the BBC chucked a lot of stuff. Early Doctor Who was notoriously missing. But also here, they threw out like the first 8 years of Johnny Carson hosting The Tonight Show. And Johnny Carson didn't know this. He thought he was owning his own, because he was a very powerful dude for a while. But he checked in like the mid-70s and blew a gasket when they said, oh, sorry, yeah, apart from the bit we put in the like anniversary show, yeah, we have nothing from 1963 to 1971. We threw it all away without telling him, without asking him, and it's gone. It's not recoverable. There was no one at home with a home recorder at the time,
You only see the silver-haired Johnny Carson and not the dark-haired Johnny Carson.
Right. You don't see the smoking Johnny Carson.
Right. And he did a whole set of years in New York before he moved out to L.A.
In the studio that Jimmy Fallon uses now. That was the Tonight Show It was more like a more vertical, like Dick Cavett kind of layout. And yeah, and it was a 90-minute show. So pretty long, like every night doing a 90-minute show. That's, and I can see why he didn't want to do that after a while.
Well, he came on after the 10 o'clock news, so from 10:30,
East Coast,
and he played the midnight.
Yeah,
and that's got to be And he would have 4 and 5 guests because he had to fill in all that time.
Right. Yeah.
He did his 8-minute monologue and then guests.
But then you'd even you talk to different people than just movie stars, authors and, because you're in the New York world where it's literary and stuff like that. So here's Norman Mailer, and stuff like that. Not so much these days. Anyway, I'm just worried. I have worries about my own collections of stuff that, how long are these going to last? DVDs apparently can degrade after a while. Certainly VHS tapes and cassette tapes can. I've got a lot of things stored in cool, dry places, but still. Or even if you digitize them, how long is that digital format going to be playable? Sorry, we have all these digital files, but we don't have the software that plays it anymore. And we don't have anyone that remembers what algorithm encoded it anymore. Sorry, whereas, a vinyl record...
That is why Pixar does not... Their archive copies are filmed.
They actually keep it.
They do everything digitally, and then they put it on film, and that's their archive.
Oh, that is smart.
For that very reason, because they're worried. They were going through and they're saying, okay, we're storing it this way. Because remember, you used to have a zip drive. Then you had a hard drive. Then you had a different kind of drive. And they were saying, well, if they keep changing the formats, how are we going to go back and say, this is the film? And they went, oh, we have a way of doing that.
It's called
Put
film.
it on film.
Yeah, especially that mid-90s era. That's God, I have zip discs around here. What am I going to do with them?
Yeah,
they're useless. There's
and 2 different kinds. 2 different sizes.
Oh, man. Or even just, I realized I can't just... Apple laptops don't have drives anymore. They don't have a disk drive. They don't have a CD drive.
No disk drive.
What am I going to do with all this? So I have a PlayStation, and it can act like a Blu-ray or a DVD player and a CD player. But that's only they only build those to last until the next model comes out. So they're really not that great. Oh man. However, I did see it was another demonstration of upscaling old video, and particularly he said, here's a mini DV, here's an old VHS, here's something else. And so formats I exactly, even high 8. I'm like, oh yeah, you're talking my language now.
I still have a bunch of digital high 8s.
And yeah, the upscaling, it was doing some really incredible things, especially background scenery, grass, rocks, things like it. And they were saying they were using a new technique where they take the starting image and then they actually kind of fuzz it out, add extra just gray noise and blur it a little, and then do a mathematical comparison from the blurrier image to the one you started with, and interpret that as a algorithm going forward, and then push it forward. Like, okay, we can now extrapolate from the starting image into a sharper image based on the blurry image to the and I'm like, oh, and that is working very well and is very smart.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. You get it.
When you said that, and I went, oh, they're thinking of it as a timeline, or not a timeline.
Yeah, but basically, a continuum.
So if you go from here to here, we can extrapolate from here to here.
And it turns out it works. It's
what if it had more information? What would it look like?
And the guy was saying, well, this is their first version of it, but it's like, I'm going to check in on them every year as they keep iterating on the software, being better at it. So if I have some plan to do this to something I have, waiting another year is probably going to be a really good thing to do. Don't need to rush out and do it. Although I'm thinking about it, I guess, because this is the 20th anniversary of the official Crone DVD coming out. It was 2005. I spent all 2005 getting it to the point where I could find. And this was in the day when I had to actually like make a master disc and send it to a duplicator and have them press.
Yep.
Although I'm kind of glad because you get real DVDs that way.
Yeah.
It's not like a read-writable thing. It's actually was mastered in an actual thing. So they're all still good. I got hundreds of them if you want another one. But yeah, okay, 20 years. Oh my God. And it's still not on YouTube yet. Well, maybe it can be now. And one sticking point, because I started thinking about this in 2013, YouTube was saying, you got to have the captions. You got to have the subtitles. I'm like, okay. And I was trying to tediously write out the time code by hand and input it into doing captions. Absolutely.
Before you put it up?
Yeah, it was a requirement in 2013.
We put ours up and then had it auto caption.
Yeah, I don't.
It won't auto caption.
Yeah, I'm having a big hard. Even this stuff. I'm having the Adobe Premiere generate the captions, and then
Premiere does that too now.
Because somehow it's not allowing.
YouTube used to generate.
Yeah, I watch a ton of things that have auto captions, but some things don't, and I'm having trouble telling it when I'm uploading, just auto captions, please. And it seems to be like grayed out as an option, like you can't. And I'm not quite sure what that is. Although you do have to. There's a point where you specify the language, which version of English is it? American, U.S.
Oh,
English.
right, yeah.
And then maybe you need to tell it that before. But then the next question is, do you have a captions file? And I do, because I can send them the one that Premiere generates. And so it's been doing it that way. It's not auto-generated. It's pre-generated by another thing. Anyway. But
check this out, Rob.
Problem if I were to upload it today, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, you can. Here's the new AI, application for, and it could be for film. You know how, say you make an English film, right? And you have to keep your dialogue on a different track from all the rest of the mix, so that if you sell it to Greece, and they're not subtitlers, they are dubbers, they can bring in people to overdub it. Well, there is this excellent software now, AI software, that will take all the voices and say, okay, what language do you want it? They will take the quality of the voice. It sounds like that same person, but speaking the other language. And where I heard it the first time was I listened to Ukraine the latest every day, and they have started to apply that Ukrainian and Russian so that they can send that podcast to those listeners, and they have Ukrainians and Russians on their staff who listen to it and go, "Yeah, that's pretty right," and they barely have to mess with it. And when they played it for you, you go, "Holy fuck, that sounds exactly like
the guy, but
the person, but they're speaking Ukrainian."
Wow!
And so imagine you make a movie in English, and I said, "Oh, what language do you want in?" No problem.
I mean, especially
suddenly
since
all the dialogue is in that language.
I mean, Netflix insists you have 8 or 9 different languages ready. And I remember early on in editing,
well, they require you to. Yeah,
I was trying to actually do that, like make sure the dialogue could be lifted, like pretensions that it's going to be in other languages at some point. And then later, I'm just like, I just need to get it done. I'm not doing that anymore. Yeah, that would be the proper thing to do. But let's be real here and just get this English language.
Well, you can take it to a post house now, and they can pull that out for you now, even if you didn't mix it that way.
Yeah.
So post house now can pull that stuff out. I'm not sure exactly how they do it, but they do it.
I would like another. I mean, it's like I got it. I worked on it till I was, at the end of my human limits. But I still knew like there is kind of a whole another layer of post production that never happened to it that I would kind of like to have done to it. And including, really beefing up the sound of the black hole, finalizing the score so it's not just the piano. That was supposed to be, here's the idea of what the themes are supposed to sound like. This is not supposed to be the final thing for the whole thing. And color grading it and all the other business.
Right.
And I'm like, well, so now I'm thinking, certainly it's much. I would go to some post house now and say,
you go to a post house.
I would go to a post house. So I now I'm thinking I need a budget to go to a post house. Well, maybe that's something I could apply to a grant for, or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know how much I would need. $8,000, $15,000,
8 to 10.
Okay.
8 to 10.
Yeah. Okay.
For what is it? 71 minutes.
It's 109 minutes. So it's not 120 minutes. It's 109 minutes. Hour 49.
An hour 49. Okay.
So fairly long, but I knew I was not going to. That was another thing. I was trying to be very professional about. Like, yeah, I'm going to throw away scenes I care very much about to get this running time reasonable and under 2 hours.
Under 2.
It was important because I felt like that's being professional about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did it, and the movie feels kind of right to me. But yeah, there are all these things I would like to do, and so yeah, okay. That's a good number to have in my head. Like, yeah, okay. I don't have that in my wallet right now, but it's possible I could find some source to do that. Well, thanks for talking that through with me. I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, if someone found, because I know that post houses are really good at color grading now, and they use all kinds of AI tools to compare and contrast scenes. And then, you know how you used to have to do that manually, and go, I want it to look like this, and then you'd see another scene, and you'd apply the thing to that, and you go, oh, that doesn't look right. Yeah. But the AI can figure that out. Okay, you want it to look like this, and I can take this one down a little bit, this one up a little bit, and make it, grade it so it's the same thing all the way through.
And I would love to supervise it as the director and not have to push all the buttons myself. I would love that at this point. I put in my time.
You could supervise the sound remix,
it would still be what I want. I just don't have to personally do all of it.
Do all the work.
I earned my right to have that, I think. Okay, well, we're actually been talking quite a long time and should probably let each other get on with our lives. Yeah, so a lot of this is good stuff. I don't want to cut down too much of it. But
well, it was fun for us anyway.
It was fun for us anyway. It may not be fun for anyone, but no one has to watch these things. They're invited to.
No, he's putting a gun to their head.
I was thinking, really what we're doing is 10, 12 years from now, we'll look back and go, hey, look how young we were. How cool. And that's what we used to talk about. Oh, yeah, it'll be a memory.
Adrian Brody's acceptance speech.
Yeah.
So
we'll
get that going.
We'll get that. I mean, it seems like...
Is he the only Oscar dude to be played off twice? If they tried to play him off, and he did no. I'm winding it up.
Okay, one more thing.
They played him off again, and this time he said, "Okay, I'll get out of here."
Oh, I just remember 2 more quick Oscar hot takes. When you're accepting short film Oscar, you're not the best. You're not the best actor winner. You don't get to tell your life story and talk for 2.5 minutes. Sorry, just thank a couple of people. and also, when they come out to give the feature documentary award, and they do their 2 minutes of comedy shtick that's really stale. It's and then the movies, of course, they're introducing are going to be about pestilence and murder and terrorism and don't do the shtick. Just say, here are the nominees for the best documentary feature. We're all enlivened by documentaries in our lives. And just give out the award. Don't just stop doing the comedy bit before the super serious, especially when you want to cut the runtime down a little bit. But yeah, and if you're getting, I mean, I know if I were up there to get a short Oscar award, I would want to say a whole bunch of stuff. This is it. I'm here.
I'm never gonna be here again.
It's like no one. We don't care that much. Sorry. It's great that you want
we
it.
don't know who
but
you are.
Now go. Now go. Oh well. Anyway, so all right. I will talk to you when I talk to you. How's your rehearsal schedule coming up?
It's just like last month, 10th and 24th.
Okay.
So
So
we
next
can
week
do early.
Okay.
Next week early.
Okay.
I am supervising a post production for Alan's film.
Oh,
and that'll be the next 3 weeks starting today.
cool.
So I will be really busy. And Alan called me during this call, so I have to call him back.
Oh,
but
okay.
No, but I am actually doing film stuff now. So I know, pretty cool. But I will be. I'll fit it in though. I'll figure out a way to fit it in.
Okay. Well, it's up to you because I'm glad you're busy. That's a great thing. Okay. All right. I'll talk to you later.
All right, man.
Bye bye. How do I stop this crazy thing?